Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the all-new Edge of Reality TV. I'm Willie, and this, of course, she is still the lovely, mystical, and very mysterious, so she must be Lynne Nickerson. Hi, how you doing tonight?
Great, yourself?
I'm doing all right.
Good, it's nice to be back.
It's been quite a while since we've been here.
I know. I hate to count the months. It's been over a year, hasn't it?
It's been about 3 years, actually.
No.
Oh, yeah. It's been about 3 years, but I think we still remember how to do it. What do you think?
We're going to give it a go.
Going to give it a go?
Give it
All
old
right.
college
Okay.
try.
Is it just us, or is there somebody else here with us?
Pardon me?
Is it just you and me, or is there somebody else here?
I think we have a guest tonight.
Oh,
I could be
okay.
mistaken, but that's
All
what I
right.
heard through the grapevine.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that guest would be, his name is Dave McCullough. He's from Massachusetts, and he has been researching Bigfoot for about 15 years, primarily in Massachusetts and New England. He is one of the founders of Sasquatchachusetts, and also a member of the BFRO. He was a member of NESRA research group that was featured on the History Channel's Monster Quest. He has been a guest speaker on several radio shows and a speaker at several different conferences.
And we're lucky to have him tonight.
And we're lucky to have him tonight. So welcome to Edge of Reality, Dave.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank
Our
you for
pleasure.
being here. And you know, you could have come up with a little bit easier word to say than Sasquatchachusetts.
Actually, it's Squatchachusetts, but
Squatchachusetts.
It is a mouthful.
Okay.
Oh, it is, yeah. Hey, you're right.
But,
Even
It's
with my
cute.
glasses, I got it wrong.
So who's your marketing guy?
John Walk is the founder and brains behind the,
Did he come up with that?
yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, it's catchy.
It is, yeah. There's a lot of people like it. Get a lot of artists.
Yeah, you know, when I don't put that extra on the beginning, it makes more sense. It's easier. Squatchachusetts, you know.
Squatchachusetts?
And I'm trying to make it too hard. So,
So,
That's fun.
tell us how you got involved in this. What piqued your interest to begin with to even start looking into the existence of Sasquatch?
Looking into it, well, I've had a lifetime interest in the topic itself, probably going way back to the early 70s, a couple of those shows, Leonard Nimoy
Like
in
when this
Search
started?
of,
Oh, well,
and,
the Gimlin-Patterson film.
so, yeah, just a armchair fan, but then in the 90s with the explosion of the internet and the information out there, I just started reading sighting reports, the evidence that actually is out there, and I just got hooked, and I met a couple people that had experiences, and then it convinced me. I talked to some very credible people that told me their stories, and I
Yeah.
kind of got hooked.
When you start hearing those firsthand experiences, it's
Yeah.
really hard to fake it, especially when people who don't know each other start relating similar elements of a story
Yeah.
that indicate the same thing.
And once I went to a couple conferences and seeing all the eyewitnesses and people getting up and talking about it,
Yeah.
and the effects it's had on people's lives is very traumatic. A lot of people wish it never happened. A lot of outdoors people have totally given up camping. A lot of hunters, no more hunting.
It can be scary
It's-
because these things are huge.
Yeah, and a lot of them also were very skeptical going into it until they actually
Yeah, most people
have
are.
an encounter.
Yeah, because what they say is, where are the bones? You don't see any bones, so is it really real?
Yeah.
Are people just telling myths and
Yeah.
legends, you know?
have you had an actual encounter yourself?
No, not a visual. I've had them where I know within 50 yards, I know they're right there. I've had a couple trees smashed. They call them tree tip overs. You'll hear the crack and the
Yeah.
slams into the ground. Not huge trees, but
Little saplings.
yeah, good
Big-
enough that you
big
come
enough it
back
wasn't
and
a
look.
person that did it.
Yeah. Hollering for 2 really good vocalizations. And 2, those were like 2 in Massachusetts, 1 in Vermont,
Wow.
and 1 in upstate New York.
Do you think that those vocalizations that you heard, do you think they were a scare tactic or just announcing a presence?
I think the 2 I heard were announcing their presence.
Good.
Yeah, and it was actually when we were leaving. So it was almost kind of a sign off.
Yeah. Yeah, we're here.
I'm here.
Just to bring up Mary Joyce, she has a website called Skyship Over Cachers, and it's caches like cashier, CASHIERS.com. She has all kinds of accounts there about Sasquatch encounters and whatnot, but she also has a recording of a vocalization of a Sasquatch speaking.
Yep.
And it's incredible because there's a language there, and there's kind of a combination of phonetics and grunts, and it's interesting if people are interested in maybe hearing one of these and not having to go out into the woods and, do your own investigating, because it can be dangerous.
Absolutely.
You can go to her website, Mary Joyce, skyshipovercachers.com.
A lot of people have reported they can hear people talking, they think but they can't understand what it is.
Yeah.
And I've read that on hundreds of reports where they know something's out there talking, but it's like
It's mumbled.
Russian, Japanese, mix of, they call it, there's different names for it, but I haven't quite heard that. But I do have some recent recordings from a friend in North Carolina, and you can tell it's definitely talking, so there's usually more than one around. When people hear one, there's usually, most likely not alone. Whistling, they whistle to communicate.
Yeah.
Bang on trees, knocks on trees.
Or throw rocks to
Throw
scare
rocks,
people,
that'll get you
yeah,
out of here.
to get you out of there.
Leave little gifts.
I think it's just an intimidation to get you out of there.
Yeah,
Because from what I've heard, they could be pretty accurate. If they wanted to hit you and get you out,
and kill you, yeah.
they're not going to just hide in the trees and bang on stuff. But unless you refuse to leave, then they're going to come out and probably just let you see them and you'll take off.
Well, we were talking, were you going to say
I
something?
was just going to say, so you think it's not a case of they want to do you harm, you're on their territory, and they would just like you to leave.
Exactly.
Please don't bother us, we
Yeah.
don't want to hurt you.
Yeah,
More
I'd
like
say
that,
8 out of 10 reports of someone out in the woods, they call it escorting. They will literally, if you don't leave, they will
Oh,
walk with
escort
you.
out?
And so many people have said it, when I stop walking, it stops. I'll walk again, I'll hear it walking, when I stop again, it stops. So they think it's most just making sure you leave.
We did, off camera, we were talking about, there are different species, and we can get into that a little bit later, but if they're given that they're different species, then maybe they do have different languages. And one of them had been referred to as being maybe very similar to a Native American dialect from either Northern California or the Northwest area. Have you heard that there are different languages, or does there seem to be all one?
I have heard, I've heard there's different types.
Okay.
And different type of communications where they sound different. Some are very high-pitched and very loud.
Oh,
A lot of people will say it goes right through you.
ooh.
The ones I heard were farther away. They weren't really where you could feel it.
It makes you wonder what the origins are of this creature, since they do have different appearances. For instance, this Kuani lapsaritis, and I brought a couple of these books just to show the sources of what I've read. This is the Sasquatch people, and this is a gentleman here, Dave Gibson, living amongst the Sasquatch, a primer. He lived with the Sasquatch at least feet away. And then David Politis, who is very well-known, tribal Bigfoot. I've taken a lot of extractions from these people. And Kuani lapsaritis in particular mentions that there are 4 species of Sasquatch that live in North America alone. And he was talking about vocalizations, but a lot of them don't even have to talk, in that they're very telepathic. So the 4 species that he talked about were the ancient ones, who appear like the typical Sasquatch, but they have more human features, and their arms don't go down to their knees, and their heads and their facial features are more human-like. And then you've got your typical Sasquatch that does have the long arms, and you've got what he calls like a dog-faced Sasquatch, which I hadn't heard of before.
Could be talking about dogmen. Would people refer to dogmen?
Well, maybe. Dog-faced or baboon-like forest giants with a snout, which is rarely reported, and they look like the other Sasquatches except for their facial physiognomy. And then the 4th one is the orangutan-faced one, which is found, I don't know, do you have a picture of that, the orangutan one, in the tropical.
Did Dave have one?
Nope, that's,
Yeah, I think that one from Florida.
yeah, this
Yeah,
one
this
right
one, yeah.
here. who is supposed to kind of resemble an orangutan.
Definitely look, a lot of people have reported it because they've been brown auburn, like an Irish setter, so they've
Oh.
even called it an orangutan.
Yep, and
You say-
they're also called skunk ape. and
Yep.
They do
Yeah,
smell.
this one here is from Florida. That's a famous picture. Yeah, down there, it's the Florida skunk ape.
And also in some of the southern states like Louisiana and Alabama, right? They've
Yep.
cited them there. So that's 4 alone that live in North America. So he also mentions, Kwani Lapsaritis mentions that they also use sticks. They'll do the gifting, and they'll leave something, sometimes when they're trying to communicate with somebody, but they'll leave sticks using Chinese symbols. And they decoded 3 of the symbols. One almost looks like an A with a cross on it, and the symbol is supposed to mean man, and with a cross it means big man, and another stick indicated great big man, and another one indicated friend, but it was using Chinese symbols. So whether they speak Chinese or not, I don't know, but
They are on every continent. And in China, they
Yeah.
call it the Yeren, a
Yeah.
giant man.
so what do you suppose they use for language? Do you think it's similar to the population, the indigenous population of people?
It could be from different tribes. There's so many, every single North American and Canada tribe has a different name for it.
Yeah,
So I'm
they
sure
do.
it's regional, could be a regional communication. There's, in California, they found petroglyphs and cave drawings.
The drawings of
With,
them,
like you
yeah.
said, the big man, the very big man, and
Yeah.
there was 3 of them in that. But these are thousands of years old.
This
Again,
isn't
the
a new
footprints, they
phenomenon.
look just like a lot of these footprints, but on thousands of years old.
Well, we might as well talk about these since they're staring us
I
in the
was
face.
just going to say, yeah.
Yes.
Want to tell us about these?
Sure. This one here is how the term Bigfoot was coined. There was a road construction crew in Northern California who was, every day they were finding their equipment tossed around and messed with, and then
Oh, I read that
the
account.
foreman found these. The next morning, they come in and cast it, brought it to the newspaper. And there's a famous picture of the Humboldt Times, and the caption was Bigfoot found in Northern California, and he's holding this up, so that's how the term Bigfoot came about. This one over here is,
This one.
this was 1958 also. This was from the Patterson-Gimlin site, film site. If you show, I think you have that
Do
picture
you-
also.
Now, do you think that's from a juvenile?
No, I think this was from,
An adult female?
this was on this trackway from this creature.
Okay,
Clearly a female, you
Yep.
could tell.
definitely a female.
And
She's well
16-inch
clothed.
tracks. That was 1967. That's indisputable. Even now, they can't debunk it. They can't
Yes, I
find
know.
any zippers, they can't find nothing. And as technology catches up to it, all the digital equipment breaks it down, where it can go frame from frame.
With the
And
muscle
you can
movement, you can see the
muscles moving.
musculature. Yeah.
They zoom up on the face. It's really incredible. It was taken in '67 on a Kodak camera.
Well, with the size of that foot, how much has she been estimated to weigh?
I'm not sure about the weight, but it's figured that by measurements from the site they took, they were there for days afterwards, 7.5 feet is what they figured she was, probably
7.5
at
feet
least
tall.
500, 600 pounds.
So you're thinking this cast here, it wasn't just that it was at the same site, you think it was the same? It was
Yes.
the same, or it was
Yes.
taken at that time?
There was
Oh,
other
okay.
sizes there, so they know she wasn't alone.
Yeah.
But in general, the path she took, these were from that track.
Oh,
from
okay,
that
so
path.
those are the actual prints, all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's noted now by a lot of foot experts that the cast they made, they took the flattest and most perfect, you can see how flat it is. Now, they were saying that they don't know, they're amateur researchers, so they took the clearest, straight, flat. It almost has no action in it, like walking action,
Right, yeah.
damage to the dirt. But they did what they did, and they got, I think, the best film ever of something caught out in out in the open like that in light, daylight.
And how about the other one in the front?
This one here is from Washington State in 1992. If anyone knows of Dr. Jeff Meldrum, he's on
Oh, yes, yeah.
every program. If you ever see a picture of him or on any show, this is the cast that's he's holding. It's the most clearest and defined. You can see the toe stems in it, toenails, scars, and
Scars? Is this a scar?
nope, those are just from the mold itself, making
Oh.
the mold, but a lot of these come back with, you can see the nails in them. But this one here was cast by a sheriff within 15 minutes of a woman calling about a prowler running through her field. And this was in a perfect, there's other tracks that go to this, but none of them came out this clear, and it was in the perfect environment. It was a mud puddle. Walking actually came right out of the puddle. It was in a salmonberry patch. So a lot of these things are found around food sources like that or water.
Mm-hmm.
So,
They're usually found at a certain altitude, aren't they?
yes, yeah, usually at least 3,000 feet or more, but they've been seen also in coastal
Yeah,
Massachusetts, even down by the Cape.
yeah.
Very low elevation. There's no hills down there. And they're-
No,
And Monster Land.
Monster
That's
Land,
not
yeah.
exactly high altitude
Right,
out there.
right. So different environments could be like we were showing the Skunk Ape. It seems like the southern states down in the swamps from East Texas all the way to Florida,
this is the
Louisiana.
skunk ape.
It's all bayous and very
Yep.
wet, and so it seems like the perfect environment for, you can see that this creature here is nothing like the one in Florida.
Yeah, they're
So
definitely,
there's
especially
a-
facial.
Example of two different kinds,
Hmm.
of some of the pictures that they've gotten.
This one looks like a baseball glove.
That does, looks like I probably put a catcher's mitt inside the palm. This is from Washington State also, researcher Paul Freeman, 1992. He had found a lot of tracks. Actually, there's a really good video he took also of one walk. It's probably the second best film after this film here. It's called the Freeman film. And around there, like he got this, he actually got one that it was sitting on the hill. This was all around a water spring on the Blue Mountains. So over the years, he's gotten a hand. This is one of the most complete hand casts. He has a butt print. He has baby ones, fingers. There's one that just the fingers in the ground, and that's incredible, just the size of it alone. But you can see the thumb on, opposed to ours are down on the bottom of the palm. This is more up, middle of the palm towards the fingers. So it is a different design. So again, if someone was going to hoax that, they thought, let's not make it like the perfect grip.
Well, how did you come by these casts?
My travels out west visiting friends, and actually Dr. Jeff Meldrum, I got a couple from him. That one's from him. The film site, actually this one too. Most of my collection, I have a lot more, but yeah. That's his thing. Cliff Barrickman from Finding Bigfoot. He's a good friend of ours also. I've gotten a couple from him.
Well, have you been out in the wild, Dave, exploring yourself, investigating, looking for these things?
Oh, yeah.
So where do you go?
Western Mass, actually, I got something this weekend coming up.
Oh,
A report from the BFRO, a man in the Berkshires.
oh.
Going to, again, I haven't even met them yet, but when people are willing to have total stranger come to their house and walk you around their property, that's when, we've had a couple hoaxes where you get there and they don't even answer the call and say, all right, you got us. But more often than not, that's a rarity where someone pulls something on you.
How do you vet people like that?
So we usually screen them on the phone a couple times, like, look, don't waste our
Kind of
time.
cross-examine them, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you gotta,
ask them again, and if they have different details, they'll, well,
If the story changes.
yeah,
Yeah.
last time you told me,
Yeah.
we've had that a few times.
Okay, so this one in the Berkshires, what has he reported? Just something hanging around his yard?
Yeah, he's seen some odd-looking tracks in the ground. He's heard rocks come through the trees when he's out. Not big rocks, just little
Yeah.
rocks, but he lives out in the middle of nowhere. Who's out throwing rocks into his yard, you know?
Exactly.
I think he's heard a couple vocalizations.
It'd be nice
And
if he could
people
record
that
them.
have this, it's not constant. It'll go on for a little while, and it could be a season or two
Yeah.
where they'll say, "No, I haven't heard nothing in months," and then you get a text like they're back. They'll find a, tree bent in a circle, tied around. That's when you find stuff that you can tell wasn't from the wind.
Yeah.
Some of them are bowed in, almost tied around another tree.
Yep.
We've gone up to a couple and pull it, and the thing will just come back up like,
Wow.
spring back up. So
What
the
do you
wind
think-
didn't, and it's layered,
What do you think the purpose of that is, especially when you find a couple of saplings that have been crossed?
That could be warning markers to other Sasquatch
Warning.
and clans. They
Territorial?
thought they stay in clans, so,
Okay.
excuse me, I'm sorry. And, but yeah, we found structures where a heavy tree will be, the root will be up in the air. So it's totally suspended, but the root is the
The root ball is in the
the
air?
high part of the
Oh, that's
structure.
weird. They also seem to kind of make huts, and I don't know if they're huts for like sleeping in or if they're like ground level hunting blinds on a game trail to catch deer or something.
Yep.
So do you find that people have reported that they sleep, that that's where they sleep, or do you think they're just for hunting blinds?
I think more of a hunting blind.
Do you?
Yeah, they've been, a lot of them have been found with hair in them, scat in them. They
That's
stink,
true.
they're rancid.
Yeah.
I think they're temporary shelters, nothing that, they don't stay in one place for long unless there are caves out there where
There
people
are
don't know
caves,
about,
yeah.
that are in the brush where people just have no idea.
What David Pletus was also saying was that some of them out in the Northwest, they climb the trees and they stay in the trees.
Yes, yeah,
Can you imagine? How would you sleep in a tree?
yeah.
I don't
Well,
know, hang yourself
gorillas-
up the branches?
Monkeys and gorillas do.
I suppose so.
Other animals to stay away from predators.
Yeah, but
Could be the younger ones, I think, because I think the big, large ones, maybe a little too big for, unless they're in the giant redwoods, but they've been seen out there too. Actually, Les Stroud, on one of his survival
oh,
things,
yeah.
he holds a camera facing himself when he's walking along the trail, and they caught one up behind him going from branch to branch.
No kidding.
And he had no idea, but when they watched the film later on,
Was it a little one then?
yeah, yeah, but they
Branch
could,
to branch in the trees.
yeah,
I think I saw
you
that.
could see it was just a clump sitting,
Yeah.
so you don't think nothing of it. Then you could see it just come out, grab a branch, go from tree to tree, and
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw that one.
another famous one from New York, southern New York, actually, by the Catskills. And it's a baby jumping off a larger one into a tree, and they can see it swinging around like a trapeze artist.
It's fun to
It
play in
just
the
could not have been
trees.
faked.
But it doesn't offer any shelter from weather. So I was wondering, why would they sleep in the trees? Just maybe to stay away from,
Maybe if
other
in a storm,
predators.
they know a storm's coming, or if it rains, they run for cover,
Yeah,
or
I sup- yeah.
they could build shelters up. They find shelters in the brush where you wouldn't even know it, because it's just green and it fills in.
Or up in a tree, it would
It
give them a
blends
good
in.
vantage point.
Yeah.
They can see what's
Yeah.
all around them, see what's coming.
Yeah, out of danger.
What do you say when people are serious skeptics and they expect you to prove to them that it exists? What do you say to them?
It's very easy to be a skeptic, because it's like you say, where's the bones, where's this, where's that? But if you look, there's so much evidence out there that I really don't
I
try to
think so.
prove it to anyone anymore. I used to always, I know they're there. So now I don't waste my time trying to convince people. I'm more of a convinced than I am a believer. I've had a
Yeah.
couple experiences I can't explain, and
Yeah,
Well-
and I know what you mean. I believe it, I don't care if you do or not, you know?
Right.
This
Yeah.
is-
Yep.
This is
To
what
each
I,
his
this
own.
is what I know, yeah, exactly.
it's easy to be, like I said, a lot of witnesses I've talked to, they were total skeptics. until police officers, I know a couple ex-military guys that the toughest times of their life were in the war, but they said when they missed seeing this thing, it was
Scary.
as scared as they've ever been.
Scary. Well, then, why don't we talk a little bit about what you have experienced? Because we know that from talking to different people, different accounts, especially David Politis, his interviews, they can do things like hypnotize their prey. They can communicate with humans and scare them, just incite the fear to get out. They can also do vocalizations and imitate birds and other animals. So what was it that you experienced that kind of convinced you?
I think the tree snapping, right, within 50 yards.
Oh,
And one of my, we could hear it almost bend for us. You could hear the cracking of it and then just snap, bang, like you could hear it crash into the ground. But after that, nothing. It's
Yeah.
dead silent.
you wonder
And
what the heck
my
was
partner had a thermal imager, and he had it right on there looking, and there was no
Really?
heat signature at all. But it was a calm night, no wind. It was the only tree in that area. There was trees next to it that were even smaller. It's just another one of those things that make you scratch your head.
How do you explain it? Yeah.
I had a witness in New Hampshire saw one 50 yards ahead of him on a trail, crossing a trail into a wide open field. He hustled to it. He had his dogs with him. He got to the corner and there's nothing there. Again, I can't explain. That's why all this stuff remains unexplained, but
So do you think that they might be interdimensional as well?
I think there's a different kind that could be. When I started this, I was dead against all those theories, but the longer I do it, it helps explain that there's been trackways that just stop
True, like in the snow
going
and
through
all
a
of
field
a
and
sudden,
it just stops.
Yeah,
They just-
how do
It
you?
didn't
Disappear.
backtrack, it didn't,
it just, the footprints ended.
a lot of people, another theory is portals.
Yep.
Orbs, they could turn to, I've seen orbs, I've seen a lot of orbs. Actually, when I
Where have
started,
you seen orbs typically?
I saw one in upstate New York.
Outside, outdoors though?
Yep, right
Wow.
where there was recent sightings that someone steered us to. and,
The orange
yep.
orbs, like,
This was orange,
It was
correct.
orange?
It was
That's interesting.
like a baseball. Just came out of the bush, we heard the bushes ruffle, we turned around and this came up about, bell tie, froze, and just gone, straight up to the sky and gone.
really, and it was about the size of a,
It was,
A
yeah,
baseball?
ball, like a baseball, but it was so fast that if you weren't facing that way, you wouldn't have seen it. It just went gone.
Well then, do you think that the chatter about there being a UFO connection, that there might be some truth to that?
I wouldn't rule that out at all. That could explain the tracks that stop in the middle of a field.
You would?
explain a lot of things, huh?
Yeah. And I was dead against those theories, and now it's just a flesh and blood, another animal. Then you find out it's not an animal, they're people.
Yep, they do have some humanoid traits and they're considered people. The Native Americans consider them people. They call them forest people for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah.
Excuse me, then, how about the odor? They seem to be able to create this odor at will, like a skunk does.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if it's the same mechanism, but why do you think they do that?
I think it's the same mechanism actually as a skunk.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Some gland that,
Usually a warning of danger. Get other animals, they get a whiff of that and take off. It could be a gland. Gorillas secrete a gland that when they're
Oh, do they?
agitated or get nervous, a stink. But again, so many, I would say 90% of the eyewitness reports I've read, you smell the stink first. Hunters, a lot of hunters have smelled the stink, or no explanation, they take off, they get, 100 yards up the trail and there's no stink anymore. It comes and goes, they say that's when you know they're around.
and what is that smell like? What does it remind you?
It's always reported like garbage, rotten eggs, rotten, roadkill.
What it is they
Just
eat?
a mishmash of all these, they say it's horrendous,
It's not very pleasant. Huh?
Right,
what?
sulfur,
Said it's not very pleasant.
Oh, no.
yeah.
Sulfur, yeah,
yeah.
that's
We
another
we got
thing.
about 2 minutes here to the bottom of the hour, so.
Okay, why do you suppose this skunk ape creature seems to smell all the time?
I think people coined it that from the stink itself, and it probably stinks from being in the swamp and
That could be. Yeah,
on top of
The
that.
swamp does
In the
smell.
swamps and the heat.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
It's-
And they seem, it's thought too, between a lot of researchers, that a lot of the swamp areas, they seem more aggressive, because they're either confined there, or they don't roam or migrate as much as the other ones.
Yeah,
So there could be some inbreeding. They've found 4-toed tracks, 3-toed tracks.
that's interesting. So
Yeah.
that might be a genetic thing?
Yeah, could be how the natives say there's good ones, bad ones. That could be an example of the bad ones. Because they're not honored in their totems and their culture like they are up in the Northwest.
Oh,
They're in all their basket weaving, and they're just honored, they totem poles, paintings, ceremonial masks. There's a lot of, I should have gave you some of those pictures, really nice.
oh, so they've made ceremonial masks of a Sasquatch?
Yes, yeah, they do dances, and actually one of them will be to honor it.
I was just gonna say, in honor of it
Yeah.
or not.
Yep,
All right, well, we're just about at the bottom of the hour, so we're going to take a little
Yeah.
short break here. When we
right.
come back, perhaps, do you come across a lot of sightings in, like, New Hampshire, Maine?
Yeah.
You know, after the break, maybe
Sure.
we can get into that, or whatever else you got.
absolutely.
So
Perfect.
we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Okay, we're back on Edge of Reality TV with our guest tonight, Dave McCullough, Bigfoot researcher. And we were talking before the break, we were asking if you are familiar with a lot of, some sightings in the New Hampshire, Maine area, along the coast maybe. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Maine has a long history going back 1700s. Mount Katahdin area, northern Maine. Maine's one of the biggest states in New England. It's 95% forested.
Yeah.
And
very remote.
there were stuff going back to the earliest settlers there. Even north of there, Nova Scotia, Eric the Red is in his journals of
Really?
giant, stinky, swarthy,
Really?
yeah, red-haired. They said they were red-haired giants, they called them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, the red-haired
Um,
giants, but did they mean hairy giants as in
Yes.
Sasquatch?
Yeah, they
Really?
said they were incorrigible, no, that's another word I'm thinking, but just very aggressive, throwing stuff at them and ready for battle with them. Because to them, they see man wasn't even here yet,
Yeah.
besides natives.
Yeah,
So, and it goes right through New Hampshire, Maine, right into New Hampshire, actually all along the northern states, New York, Pennsylvania.
and Greenland? Were they
Yep.
sighting Greenland too?
Yeah, every continent there's a type of upright, hairy hominid.
But Eric the Red, where was he sighting them?
That
Along
was
the New England
Newfoundland
coast?
and Nova Scotia,
Oh,
all the
okay.
first explorers that came down the coast. They're in their journals, and like I said, the earliest settlers to Maine, earliest newspaper accounts, mostly say the wild man, the hairy wild man.
Yeah, they call it the Wild Man.
Yeah. Like I said, right into New Hampshire is a long history of Vermont. All in New England, really.
So those that they call the Wild Man, they must have looked a bit more human, I would think.
Yeah, a lot of them, that's why they were calling them hermits. They think they were people that just retreated up into the woods and lived.
Yeah,
Some of them were more hairy. We were talking about different
Truly.
kinds earlier. They were called naked wild man.
yep, and some of them seem to
harassing.
have less facial hair so that they have more of a human face and you can make out the features better.
Right.
And off camera, we were talking about some of the tribes attribute female abduction by the Sasquatch of women of childbearing age. So,
That
maybe
was
they
well
know
known.
that they have to reinforce their genes or something.
Yep,
So there's that going on, where they have a mixture of human DNA.
yep. Yeah, a lot of accounts of that,
Yeah.
the natives. A lot of, even recently, there's, right up to today, a lot of the natives will say, don't ever follow a name that's called. They'll even call, they'll hear a child crying, a woman crying, like it's in distress, to get people to go into the woods. And that's where they think a lot of the bad ones, how they kidnap you, and
Yeah, it's a trap.
a lot of accounts like that, don't answer it.
It's hard to
That
differentiate.
people go, run back in their house, and then they find out the person that was calling is, and they are well known to mimic other animals,
Yes, they do.
birds, a lot of different animals.
It's almost like
Woodpeckers, they clack rocks together to sound like a woodpecker, or owls. A lot of hunters will say
Birds.
that. They'll say this was way too deep and bassy to be an owl.
They're supposed to be really adept at ventriloquism. It's like they can throw their voices and imitate different animals, and
Mhm.
like you said, the baby's
Yeah,
crying.
I've heard that.
So we were talking about this too. So do you feel that there is a particularly bad species, or if there's just evil ones amongst each of the groups? What do you think?
I think each of the groups, there's good and bad, just like
Okay.
they say in people, there's good people, bad people,
Yep.
good dogs, bad dogs,
Bad
stay away
seeds.
from it. But there's even accounts of the good ones protecting people and to get them out.
Yes. Now,
That they've even communicated to
mentally
them
telepathy.
mentally to avoid the bad ones and just get out.
So
It sounds bizarre, but these are
I
credible,
know,
honest people
yeah.
reporting these incidents.
I mean, there's just a lot of indications that these creatures are telepathic and they are psychic. There are a couple of instances where women have dreamt of Sasquatch giving them information in a way to communicate with them.
Yeah, I've read some of those too.
Excuse me, yeah. There's also the issue of gifting that I wanted to mention, and usually if there's Sasquatch in an area for a certain period of time, like a season, like maybe in the fall, where they love to eat apples, and they may come to the person's house and pick apples out of the yard or vegetables toward harvest season, that they may try to communicate, and they will leave little gifts, either little natural things that they've made, and this is one of them right here. This was from Dave Gibson's book, and this is horse mane hair that had been wrapped up and then tied to look like a bow as apparently a gift to Dave Gibson's wife, and it was left on the ground by her car. So they do stuff like that, or they'll leave, like I saw one that almost looked like a basket, and one that almost was fashioned like a doll left on a tree stump, and the communicants were leaving gifts for each other, and they'd leave something that it would be gone and something else would be in its place. Sometimes it's stones, that they'll
Yeah.
leave different stones.
Yeah, we were mentioning, we were talking during the break about Monsterland
Yeah.
Yes.
and Ronnie LeBlanc, and he was talking about marbles
Yep.
left as, have you
Marbles
heard of
been
that?
a lot, yep.
Yep.
So
And there
rocks,
was one of the
quartz.
episodes on Expedition Bigfoot, where supposedly one of them left a marble for him.
Yep, I've heard that. I've heard in remote areas where you're so far from towns or anything, I know someone that found a golf ball.
A
Another
golf
guy
ball?
found a baseball. He's up in the middle
It
of
was
nowhere.
just a really good hit, you
In
know?
Oregon. So, either objects they've taken out of people's yards or property that they get a kick out of, but, people have found some really strange stuff
Yep.
where nothing else could have brought it there to, because they're leaving
Yeah.
stuff also. And they usually have a gifting stump where they just leave it
Yeah.
in the same
Right,
place every
Yeah.
time. Some stuff they leave up high out of reach where nothing else can get it and it's gone. And that stuff is found in the same spot. The food's gone, but there'll be an odd braid or They
That's
found
amazing.
horses with braids. People have come out the next day. One of the horses, the entire mane is all braided.
Really?
Yeah,
So
isn't that amazing?
it's not running in fear, just maybe like a human, just
Yeah.
standing there patting it, and it's calm. And
Yes,
people have felt that also among the dread and fear they project. They've also felt really calm. And so they might have that ability with other animals.
that's true.
They've
Yeah,
been
'cause-
seen around other animals.
Yep.
Either following their pack, getting their kill. They seem to always be around a lot of coyotes. We'll hear coyote sounds. On nights this happened, you'll hear the coyotes going off. There's a really good recording of, you hear a Sasquatch call that sets off the coyotes. And then it gets to you hear all these other animals chiming in. Then you hear the big roar and everything stops, which a lot of
I hadn't heard that.
hunters and people have reported that it's like the plug came out of the forest and they know they're around.
And they're saying, shut
Native
up.
Americans say that also, that when the forest goes quiet, there's something wrong.
Well, there is that is another element of my Sasquatch experience that I think that I had. Jenny Randalls is a British journalist, and she writes about the Oz factor. And usually that's in relation to all kinds of paranormal activity, paranormal sightings or something. But people have reported, especially in Politis's book, that they'll be in the forest and everything will go quiet. It's like sitting in a vacuum. You don't hear anything, you don't hear the wind, you don't hear any chirping birds and so forth. And then something happens. But it's so odd that everything is dead silence.
It is, it's really another head scratcher.
Yeah, so what the heck is that?
Right, everything else is sensing a frequency or something
Yeah.
they're giving off that,
They're
I mean,
picking up
literally
on it.
crickets, you don't hear crickets, nothing.
Have you experienced that?
I have a couple times. Actually, on the night, I had the tree snapped and smashed. Actually, we were talking about Alexander, he was with me that night.
Oh,
Not at the incident, but he was down the road from where we were all together, and me and another guy separated, but he was there, and,
Did he experience it too, since he wasn't right with you?
No,
Does that-
we
no?
were maybe quarter mile away,
Okay,
out of range, but,
so it was your experience.
it happened to them too. They said it got really quiet, and you just get a weird feeling when, like you said, you don't even hear the wind, you don't hear the trees, you don't hear nothing at all. It's literally like the volume got turned down.
Yeah, and then when I heard that one particular time, both my friend and I, we felt like we were being told, get out of here. There was this fear we had to leave.
Yeah.
It was overwhelming. So we got in the car and we drove away.
They say they can project that fear.
Yeah.
I felt that in New York, actually, not far from where I saw the orb. And I felt great. It was early in the morning, but then all of a sudden it was just a feeling of dread. And they say I got
That's another
nauseous.
thing, yeah.
All of a sudden, I just couldn't explain it, and I hightailed it out of there, because I know a lot of experienced people that have done it for years. They say, go with your gut feeling, where if you get one negative feeling that time to go,
Get out of there.
just go.
Yep,
Come back if you want, but a lot of hunters use that now, that have been scared out, but they continue to hunt. They hunt in different areas.
yeah.
And when they do get that feeling of being watched or something, they just get out. Same thing, turn around and get out.
They should, because obviously the hunters are not usually welcome because they're there to kill or find the Bigfoot, and they're
Yep.
usually aggressive, and that's not welcomed.
Right,
And the Sasquatch seem to know that these humanoids are carrying weapons.
right, yep.
They do sense that.
They're onto people that they know what your intentions are.
Yeah,
And they say there's usually, like in remote areas where the parking area is, they'll have maybe a couple staying there to see who comes in and out.
oh,
Unless there's a gated off area but it's happened so many times, even with us. When we get out of the car and shut the door, you'll hear a lot of the knocks we've gotten, and then you don't hear anything, but it's literally right when you get out of your car, and
So you're
There could be
being
one
watched.
alerting,
They're here.
they're here,
Yeah,
and they call that a sentry, that's their sentry, or
yeah.
watchman.
Yeah.
They seem to know what everyone's up, they know your intentions if you're here.
Yeah,
and-
I
and
think
other
they feel
people-
it. 'Cause,
Yeah,
I mean, even humans can have a tendency to sense something about people, whether they're bad energy, or if, for example, there's been an argument that has taken place in a room, some people can pick up on that. And I think that Sasquatch, their psychic abilities are so developed
yep.
that they're
A lot of
right on
animals
about
can,
that.
if you see
Yeah.
dogs that, or cats, they can pick up a bad vibe, I think auras or
Yeah.
negative energy.
Well, there was reports in all of these books about dogs in particular not wanting to enter a Sasquatch area, like maybe one of those little blinds, or
Yeah.
the trail where their scat was found or something.
Yep,
So they're putting out something that's almost palpable.
yeah, there's a lot of cases of the biggest, meanest dogs
Yep,
heading towards it, and they come back running, hightailing it.
that's right, yep.
Some have not even gone. They had a case, Arkansas, it's in a famous movie, The Legend of Boggy Creek, where
Yes, yeah, I've heard
they
of
had
that.
incidents going on.
Lyle Blackburn, right?
Yeah, and they brought, from Tennessee, the best hunting dogs there are, all hounds. They wouldn't even, they get out of the truck, soon as they hit the trail, they hightailed it back, cowering under the truck, wetting themselves. So they get that sense and they know this is trouble.
It's funny, I wonder what it is they're picking up on them. I mean, obviously, they're huge, so I wonder if it's it's got to be more than that. It's got to
Could
be
be
more
the
than...
infrasound.
It
It
could be
says
the
beyond
infrasound, couldn't
human
it?
range of hearing, that the
Yeah.
dogs, other animals pick up on it. And
Yeah,
it could be
it's-
just a warning, stay away, or,
Yeah, infrasound is too low for us to hear it, but
Right.
dogs,
Yeah.
Yeah.
animals can hear it, yeah.
and they say it makes you queasy and
Yeah, even though we don't hear it,
disoriented.
Right.
we feel
Yeah.
the
Instant
effects of
fear.
it. Whoa. So what else have you experienced?
Just the two vocalizations, the two tree snaps, the orbs. We've seen orbs quite a few times where there was
That's
sightings
amazing me, yeah.
in the same section of woods where it was seen. Not saying they're connected, but that's an awful coincidence to me, to be out in the middle of nowhere and
Yeah,
a Sasquatch was spotted here and an orb was spotted there 5 minutes later.
I haven't heard
And
that,
then there's nothing, but they found a footprint, and
yeah.
so, again, years ago, I would be dead against all this stuff, but I'm open to it now.
Yep. Up at America's Stonehenge, Willie and I did some filming there in North Salem, New Hampshire, and we did a table session. We did a seance session at the sacrificial table, so I recorded that whole thing. And on playback, there were wood knocks that I didn't hear with my own ears, but once on playback, so I think that Sasquatch is hanging around North Salem, too.
Wow,
Little wood knocks.
yeah,
There was that, and the other experience that we had was finding what I think was a juvenile footprint in the mud at the James House
I
in
was just gonna
Hampton.
mention that one, yeah, in Hampton.
interesting.
Yeah, we took pictures of it, and it was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches long. It was partial, but the toes and a pad of the hand, or the foot, I should say, was very clear.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it just rained. We didn't have any casting materials, unfortunately. We did get a picture of it, but it doesn't always come out very well in a photograph.
Yeah,
We need one of those fancy, light, whatever they call them, things.
Oh, yeah.
That fancy stuff that rich people can afford.
Yeah. Off camera again, we talked about, where are the bones? And one of the criteria for being considered human is having a language and having some sort of civilized, organized social structure, burying your dead. And you were mentioning that you think the Sasquatch bury their dead rather than, just die in the middle of the forest all the time, and how quickly everything decays. So do you want to mention that?
yeah, sure. I think they, like a lot of animals do, will leave and go be alone. They know they're dying. But there was a tooth found in China in I want to say the 1800s, that there was a incisor for a giant ape that was extinct. So they know there was one there, and it was going in the caves. And all these, they found it in an apothecary shop where the guy was just selling,
Odd things.
bones and fossils, and a scientist happened to find it. But I think they are. I think they really are.
Partially human.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as far as the bones, there's anything that dies in the woods is going to get picked apart and be gone. There'll be no sign of it.
Yeah, I guess even the bones, you can gnaw the bones down.
And there has been a lot of cases in the early 1900s of archaeologists that have found giant skeletons in North America. There was hundreds of them.
Yeah,
And they
there
were given to the Smithsonian Institution and disappeared. But there's mounds all over the country. There was plenty of people that saw it. There's photos of them.
I know.
9 feet, 10 feet skeletons.
Smithsonian lost it. So are you mentioning that in relationship to there being a lot of enigmas other than Sasquatch? Because there aren't those, they're believed to be people, right?
Yeah.
Those huge skeletons?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I don't believe they were thought to be Sasquatch.
Right.
Per se, yeah.
There's the famous Lovelock Caves, the
Where are
giant
those?
red-haired giants, where they actually found skeletons and a lot of depictions on the walls. And they actually have it's a 14-inch, they're like handmade sandals, where you would protect your feet. So not Sasquatch related, but giants. There's a history all around the world of this stuff being found, giants.
Yeah.
So again, there's another whole topic for another show for you.
Truly, yeah.
I have a friend that's his thing. He's studied it for years, traveled the country, all
Anthropology.
these different areas where they found newspaper accounts, but no one can come up with they all disappeared. But there's hundreds of cases of it.
The latest writes about a lot of old articles, 1800s, that were published in papers, calling them the wild men, referring to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just recent memory, it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
We going to say something?
Before the discovery of the gorilla was the early 1900s.
Was it really?
They had nothing to connect it to, so it was called a wild man, hairy person. And
Oh.
then people, started calling it the ape, looked more like an ape or a monkey.
Yep.
Yeah, so,
And in answer to what are they exactly, obviously, there are different species, and there are different species in the Himalayas as well. There have been all kinds of testing lab results, tests on hair and blood samples. You were talking about Jeff Meldrum. He was involved in the Monster Quest cabin episode where the cabin had been broken into many times, so they're trying to catch who it was, and they had put a board with nails
Yeah.
sticking up through it in front of the door, and something did come by and step on the nails and left blood and hair. So those, the blood and hair samples were analyzed, and I'll read this because I didn't get it memorized. So regarding the blood sample taken from the board with the nails, it was analyzed by the University of Minnesota and reported by microbiologist Dr. Kirk Nelson. He says that the blood samples as coming from the Sasquatch revealed that it's identical to human DNA, except that it has one nucleotide polymorphism, which is the same difference humans share with chimpanzees. It appears that the DNA is primate, but not quite human and not quite non-human. That the one base hair is deviated, and this would indicate that there's a close connection between Sasquatch and humans, although further study is needed. So they're not just animals. And people in Paulides' book have said they went out to hunt it, they had their rifles, they wanted to shoot it, and when they saw the eyes, they couldn't kill it because it looked too human.
I've heard that many times.
Yeah, gives you the creeps.
Especially with the rifle scope, you can zoom right in on the
Yes.
face, and Famous case in New York, a police officer had his gun aimed at it.
Ooh,
And he's like, I can't shoot this, it's a human, it's a type of person. Like, so first he's thinking it's a man in a suit, but it's obviously not by the
Yeah.
size of it and the speed of it. That's another witness reaction, that is they're amazed by how fast they can run, and
yeah.
just can't be a person in a suit the way they can move.
And one of the comments was, this hunter wanted to shoot it, and he said he couldn't pull the trigger because he felt that he would be committing murder because it looked too much like a human.
Yep.
So he let it go. And as for the hair samples, wildlife biologist Dr. Lynne Rogers from Minnesota, the University of Minnesota, analyzed hair samples taken from that same board going into that cabin. And research revealed that the samples did not match a known mammal in North America, and it certainly wasn't a bear. And he concluded that it looks human, like it came from a wild human. So I don't know how he comes to that conclusion per se, but he thinks that it was a human hair, but more tests would have to be performed. So there you have it from two, and I don't know about what Jeff Meldrum had to say. He was involved with the cast mostly. But those who analyze the hair and the blood samples seem to think that there's a great deal of humanoidism in Sasquatch.
Yeah, a lot of the hair samples, they can tell have never been cut. They have a tapered end where they can tell this hair has never been cut, like we have haircuts. If you look at a human hair, it's perfectly straight, and
So it
these
looked
are
like it's
angled.
worn at the tip is the
Yep,
idea.
yep.
Okay.
You can tell it was just
That must have
pulled
been
out.
what he meant then.
Yep. And also, while they were doing that episode, it's in the episode that the night, I think it was the last night, they had rocks thrown onto the roof, and the cabin had a metal roof.
Oh,
They
noisy.
went up and got the rocks, they know, this is a really remote place, way up in Canada, where they got flown in by a float plane. It is so far from, it's a summer camp
That's
for fishermen.
scary. That's so remote.
Yeah.
There's no one to come to your aid if something happens.
Right,
Okay, so what happened?
far from hoaxes. You'd have to go a
Yeah.
long way it's a fishing camp that's, basically, that's all it is, one cabin on a lake.
In Canada, did you say?
Yep.
Why? So what happened? That's where the rocks were thrown?
Yep, yeah, they got the rocks, they got the board with the nails. They had a lot going on that episode.
And
Yep.
I would like to see that. I only read about it.
And
No
it was
Monster
trashed.
Quest.
They said after it stepped on the thing, that the place was trashed after.
Oh, I bet it was a little ticked off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it
Probably.
was injured.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet that hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, people get, tetanus from stuff like that. I would have yelled.
Probably jumping up and down and
Oh.
And I believe the stain was 18 or 19 inches. And actually on the show, Jeff Meldrum traces the nails, and it's a perfect footprint. It looks just like one of these, 19 inches, exactly where it stepped. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're armed with a lot of information when people try to be skeptical.
Yeah, it's easy to be, like I say, everyone can be skeptical, but so many people that I've talked to were former skeptics and laughed at it until they get an encounter, and
Yeah.
there it is.
until you see it for yourself, you just,
And it shucks that the people like me that are out there looking and researching for years and years, I know there's some that have their whole life and they've never seen it, but yet there's Joe Schmo
I
driving
know.
up the road and it runs across the road, and so you can,
You
you
wonder
can't tell, it's like a needle in a haystack. And
You wonder if it's attitude, though. I wonder if these people have a secret agenda,
Mhm.
maybe, and it's detected.
I think out in a lot of stuff, people hear slaps on their house.
Oh,
Or
yes.
rustling outside. I
Yes.
think, just my personal thought, I think they're trying to see how you react. If you come out with your guns, so then they'd know if it's safe or not to start the gifting or start the, I think a lot of them are just mischievous, curious,
Yeah, I think so,
Maybe.
too.
seen looking in people's houses, looking in windows.
One
which
of
is
you-
really creepy, but there's
Yeah.
speaking of New Hampshire, there's a couple cases by the Gunstock Mountain. Woman at her sink doing the dishes, looking right out the window. And gentleman in New York told me about an encounter of, it was in the doorway, the little small glass squares that go around the
Yes.
front door.
Yeah,
It was over the top one looking down into the,
big.
yeah, all he could see was the eyes and saw her blink once and took off.
I'm sure they're testing whether or not we're receptive to them.
Yeah,
Probably
curious.
just looking in the windows, this is very strange behavior. What are these critters?
Studying us, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What are you
and,
making?
We're just about out of time. Been really great to have you here, Dave.
Oh, thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
having me. I really appreciate it.
Very enlightening. And thank you for bringing your samples with you.
Well,
Yeah.
no problem.
That
Anytime.
one looks heavy, is it?
The hand is very heavy.
Heavy-handed, hey?
Yeah, that's
You
a
got
10
it.
or 15 pound cast.
Is it, yeah?
Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, that is
All right.
A
massive.
lot of people, when we do the shows, kids will have it. The kid, it covers half the kid. But
Yeah,
even that,
yeah.
it'll cover a good
Yeah.
portion of
Yeah.
your body.
How often do you go out?
I try to get out when I can. Once a weekend, I'll try and get out somewhere.
You don't go alone, do you?
Sorry?
You don't go alone, do you?
No, not often.
Okay.
Not
Not
often.
often. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, and you don't
I think
care-
anyone hiking or any kind of outdoors.
I agree with you. Do
Shouldn't
you
do
bring
it
a
alone.
weapon, like not maybe a rifle, but a knife or
I
something?
have a survival knife,
Okay,
bear spray.
okay. I think he'd accept that. Sasquatch.
All right, well, again,
I'm more worried about something besides a Sasquatch, like a big cat. I know people that have seen big cats in New England. Bear,
More sightings have been reported, yeah,
charged
and
by a
bear.
moose. I know a guy that got charged by a moose, but
Mm.
I think a Sasquatch just wants you out of there.
Just wants to be left alone, I
Because
think.
if they did want you, they're not gonna bang on trees and make noise.
That's right.
And any hunting predator is just gonna come up and get you. They're not
And
gonna
grab you, yep.
advertise that they're there.
Yeah.
These are
well,
more,
we gotta, unfortunately, we're out of time, Dave.
Okay.
We gotta wrap it
well,
up.
thank you for having me, and I
And
appreciate it.
thank you for coming.
Hard thing to do, but thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
We've really
Thanks
enjoyed
again
it.
for having me.
Okay, so hey, it's been kinda nice to be back on the air, hasn't it?
It is. It's
Yep.
great.
And we'll be back again next month. Special guest next month will be David Childers and Kirsten Joy.
Okay,
And we'll
That should
talk
be
to you
fun.
all then.
all right. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.